We're making fresh pasta. This is an egg-based pasta, traditionally from northern Italy. Most of these ingredients you probably already have on hand at home. We've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 4 large eggs, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of olive oil, and 1 tablespoon of water. So to make this dough, we're going to get started here by cracking our eggs. These are large eggs we're using today. We're just going to whisk these up a little bit just to get started, and we can add a couple of our other wet ingredients in there as well. We've got our olive oil. We're using a nice extra virgin olive oil, 1 tablespoon of water. All right, now we're ready to get started with our dry ingredients. So again, this is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll dump that in. And our 1 teaspoon of salt, and I'm just going to use my spatula just to manually mix that, just to make sure that the salt is evenly dispersed with the flour. Now that we have that, I'm going to just make a bit of a well in the middle here where I can pour my wet ingredients into the middle. There we go. All right, we'll just put the lid down and lock it into place, and we're going to turn this on just to get things started. We'll mix it around a little bit, and we'll use our spatula to help get more of the flour down into the liquid ingredients. So I'll just turn it off here, and I can just simply go around with my spatula a little bit. And we're just helping some of that flour incorporate into our dough. Okay, we're going to stop one more time and lift this up. We're just going to help take everything off of our dough hook, back into the bowl. Give it one more good mix, and then we'll bring it out onto the counter to start the kneading process by hand. So lock that lid back in place. We'd like to start on low speed at first. We're just trying to get all these dry ingredients picked up by our wet egg ingredients there. Once it comes to a point like this, we're kind of getting to a shaggy dough. It's almost time to get it out of the mixer and onto the counter. All right, so we're going to tilt the lid up. I like to leave the hook on at first, just to help hold it in place. And then we can take that off, just scrape off any excess bits of the dough that are on there. And we're going to get this out onto our counter. Before we start that, I'm just going to flour it liberally. This dough does pick up quite a bit of flour, so in the beginning stages, you can add some excess flour to your counter to get started. Some of those dry ingredients that are left in the bowl, we'll put right in there on top of our dough as well. When we're kneading, usually we like to try to get our hand underneath and kind of fold the dough in half. You want to use the heel of your hand as much as possible. That's where you have the most strength. And you want to keep the dough from sticking to your hands as much as possible. Every once in a while, you might have to stop. You put a little excess flour in your hands to get some of that dough off of there. If you notice it's sticking at all, you want to add a little bit of flour at a time. You do want to knead your dough for a fair amount of time, and you should have a fairly even color with it as well. You don't want to see any bits of dry flour in there. Everything should be one color. I'm kind of keeping one side down all the time on my counter, folding it in half and pushing with the heel of my hand away from my body. And then once we turn it over, we have a nice kind of soft, supple dough that has kind of a nice even look to it. It should spring back with your finger a little bit once you press on the dough as well. That's kind of a good telltale sign that you've kneaded your dough enough. And all the dough is kind of coming together on the bottom where the seam is, and we kind of have a nice look on top here as well. Once you get it to this point, you do want to wrap it up tightly. So we use some plastic wrap. Make sure you get all of the air out of your plastic wrap. And you want to let this rest in the refrigerator for for, as I said, an hour, but ideally overnight. It'll be much easier to work with the next day. Now that your pasta is rested, it's time to roll it out. So we're going to use a traditional pasta roller this time. If you had an attachment for a stand mixer, that could work as well. What you're going to want for that is the handle for turning the rollers, our pasta dough, just a little bit of flour on there. We're going to use a bench scraper for cutting, and I've got some extra flour just for dusting the counter and the pasta dough. To get started on that, we're going to cut our pasta dough into quarters to make a more manageable piece. So we've got to cut in half, and we'll cut it again. Now we just want to be working with 1/4 at a time. So for the other 3 pieces, I'm just going to slide them off to the side, keep them covered with plastic wrap or a clean kitchen towel so that they don't dry out and start forming a skin. With our 1/4 that we have left, I'm just going to start by trying to keep it in more of a kind of a rectangular, even shape. You want to make sure that you're keeping your board and the dough floured. So I can use my rolling pin here now. Basically, you could use this to roll it out the entire way, although you're going to get a good arm workout. You can use it just to get it flat enough to get it started through the machine as well. For this, I'm basically going all in one direction. I don't want it to end up too wide and not fitting through the pasta machine later. So at this point, you do want to focus on your 2 ends, making sure that those are thin enough to get started through the machine, whichever end's going to go through first. Just make it a little bit easier on yourself. And as it's going through, you want to make sure that it's well floured so that nothing sticks. And also here where the pasta is going to be coming through the machine, we'll flour all that area as well. Again, I have it at the widest setting for my pasta machine, which is the number 7 in this case. We'll get started. Always want to start it right in the middle of the pasta machine. And I like to go through twice on the same number to ensure that the pasta dough is rolling out evenly. All right, after the first 2 passes, we are getting some different kind of ends on here. So just to make that a little bit more even, we can fold these guys in and give it a bit of a push. Another little roll with our rolling pin, again, to make sure that we can get it through the machine to get started. All right, now that we have it like that, we're going to start rolling again. We'll go twice at this number as well. You want to make sure you just go down 1 number at a time to make sure that you don't rip your dough. You can start using the back of your hand as it gets longer to help support the dough without tearing it as well. Make sure if you feel it getting tacky at all that you lightly flour it before you go through the machine. Once more, we'll put it through the machine and we'll be ready to cut. This is a nice soft dough to work with. It's great for making stuffed pastas like tortellini, ravioli, or agnolotti. Once you get it to this point, you can place it on your counter and cut it into shorter pieces that are a little bit easier to work with. If you have any more questions, give us a call or visit the website.